Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for being with us today here in the Craig H. Nilsson Auditorium for History is Lunch. My name is Chris Goodwin with the Mississippi Department of Archives and History. If you have not already, please silence your cell phones. On point, perfect. Or else that will happen. I know many of you made it to the 4th Annual Mississippi Book Festival Saturday. It was a great success and one of the best panels, in my entirely unprejudiced opinion, was the one that contained Ms. Brenda Travis. I am delighted that we will be able to have her for the entire hour today instead of just a portion of it, but let's move on to that. Also, everyone's familiar, we have the Museum of Mississippi History on this side, the Mississippi Civil Rights Museum on this side, but upstairs is the FedEx Exhibition Hall and the Medgar and Murley Evers Exhibition Hall, where through October, we have the free exhibit of Mississippi Quilts, Stories Unfolded. You'll find over there these booklets that you can pick up on that. Next week's History is Lunch, Wednesday of next week, will be exhibits designer Maddie Miller, the project coordinator. So I hope that you'll all be able to come back for that. And if you have time today, go upstairs and take a look at that wonderful free exhibit. Today, we are delighted to have Brenda Travis with us, who will discuss her book, Mississippi's Exiled Daughter, How My Civil Rights Baptism Under Fire Shaped My Life. To say a few words about Ms. Travis is her co-author, John Obey, who came from Michigan to Mississippi in the summer of 1967 and coordinated voter registration and education activities in Simpson County. He later worked at the Michigan Department of Civil Rights, earned his law degree, and clerked for the Michigan Supreme Court. A former adjunct professor at Michigan State University College of Law, Obey has specialized in the litigation of housing discrimination cases. Help me welcome John Obey and Brenda Travis.
Thanks so much for that warm welcome. I get the honor here today to introduce one of the most courageous people that I've ever known in my lifetime, Brenda Travis. In 2012, I met Brenda for the first time at a Veterans of the Mississippi Civil Rights Movement conference. I had read about her in books because her story is quoted in many of the civil rights books, sometimes incorrectly, as we learned along the way. But at that first meeting, she told me about something that you'll find in the book, but I just wanted to relate a little bit of it to you. The folks in McComb, Mississippi didn't treat Brenda very kindly. Not only did they not treat her kindly when she was 16, they didn't treat her very kindly when, in 2006, they invited her and all of the students that were expelled from Berglund High School back to get their diplomas, because many of them didn't get their diplomas. And they chose to give the rest of the students their diplomas, but they chose not to give one to Brenda. And she can tell you why they chose not to, but it was pretty incredible. But on that night that was supposed to be a joyous celebration of 40-some years after the events that occurred in 1961, she was approached after she gave a fiery speech, as you will see and hear this morning, by Randall O'Brien, who grew up in McComb, knew about Brenda as a youth, but he didn't go to the same school Brenda went to because whites went to one school and blacks went to another school. But he knew about Brenda, and he heard about the conference that was being held, and he drove from Texas to McComb for one reason only. And he drove from Texas to McComb because he wanted to present Brenda with something. And he approached her after the conference and told her that he had served in the Vietnam War and had received a Bronze Star. But he felt that that Bronze Star was more fitting that she have that Bronze Star rather than him. And you can imagine the tears that flowed from that. But I just want to read one part of what he said, and then you want to hear from Brenda. This is what Randall O'Brien said to her. Some people are asked to fight for their country, but no one should ever be asked to fight her country And that is exactly what you had to do. With that, I present my friend, the truly courageous person whose story is told in this book, and I'm honored to have played a small part in bringing that story to all of you. Thank you.
Okay. I asked to excuse my seat, but I can't stand for long periods of time. But I had the experience of a lifetime yesterday when I came into the Civil Rights Museum. And, they were asking how I felt. It was very emotional to visit with my ancestors, those who've gone on before me, those who helped to pave the path and the way for me, that I may help to keep the path open for others to follow. And not I alone, because I have Bobby Talbert, who was along the way with me, Hollis Watkins, Muhammad, would you please stand up so people can know who I'm speaking of that's here with us? MacArthur Cotton, please stand. Okay, and I don't think there's anyone else here who worked in Pike County, but these are a couple of the people who work with me, and we worked together, no matter whether you were CORE or SNCC or NAACP, we all work together in a collaborative effort to bring about what exists here today. And I never thought in my lifetime that I would have or see such a conglomerate and collective energy in one place, where they speak about the contributions of us as a people. And yes, I don't want to omit anyone, because we had white people in the movement as well who suffered some of the same, I'm going to call them atrocities, because that's what they were. And all of us, as I said, have an Emmett Till story. At least, if not all of us, most of us have an Emmett Till story. I was a young girl at the age of 10 when Emmett Till was killed. And the one magazine that they always got or purchased in our household was a Jet magazine. And in the Jet magazine was a portrait or picture of an individual they called Emmett Till, but it didn't look human. That was how beaten and battered his body was. And a few days or a week or so after Emmett Till, after that picture in the Jet magazine, the police entered our home and snatched my brother from the bed. And my grandmother wanted to know, why was he being taken? And they told her, shut up and go somewhere and sit down, old lady. And all I could imagine in my little finite mind, I call it at that age, was that I'll never see my brother alive again. The trauma of seeing Emmett Till made me feel as though this was the condition in which I was going to see my brother, if ever again. Well, thankful that he was released, because it was a mistaken identity. But at that point in my life was a decision that I made. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do. I didn't know exactly what I was going to be. Because as young children, you know, in the schools, and especially in what they call the colored schools or black schools or whatever, for the boys, for black children, there wasn't much to look forward to. And many of you know this, especially if you're in your late 60s, early 70s, you know that there wasn't much to look forward to because they had, for the boys, they had shop. For the girls, they had home economics. And that was what our future was to look like, unless, of course, you wanted to be a teacher or a preacher. And, well, that's the truth. That's the truth. If you wanted to be a teacher or a preacher, that was what you had to look forward to. So in my young mind, after having the experience of the police or the sheriff coming into our home and taking my brother, I made a decision that I knew that I had to do something. And what that something was, I hadn't a clue. Because we didn't know anything about civil rights then. And Brown versus education wasn't discussed in our home. And the reason it wasn't discussed, because it was for our own protection. They were protecting us. And as a matter of fact, I really didn't know anything about white people because we were protected. We were in a protected environment. We didn't go to school with them. We didn't mingle with them. If you saw them on the streets, what they did was, you know, you had to step aside. And many of them were so rude until they would break wind when they were passing you. That's how disrespectful they were. So we didn't go to school with them, we didn't go to church with them, and we didn't invite them into our homes. They would, you know, my parents would go into their homes and cook and wash and clean. Back to, I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew I was going to do something. And I made the decision, but also the decision was made for me. They made the decision for me. I believe today, Hollis, Curtis, Mac, Miss Flonzie Brown, we were chosen. It says many are chosen. I'm sorry. Many are called, but few are chosen. Thank you. So I believe that we were chosen because it's not everybody who can go and do the things that we did. Whatever fears we had to lay them aside because there were things that had to be done. Right, Mrs. Brown? There were things that had to be done. And if you lived in fear, you weren't going to get those things done. Because we have people today who are still intimidated, and they're not going to do anything. They won't even go to the polls and vote, even though we went and fought for the right to vote. Ma'am? Yes, ma'am. Yes, there are people today who are so fearful that they will not go to the polls and vote out of fear of, the way that there's still white rule is through fear and intimidation. So they're too afraid to go to the polls and vote. And many of them feel hopeless. Hopeless because they feel that going to the polls, and they tell you this outright. Are you a registered voter? No. Why aren't you a registered voter? It ain't going to do no good. It's not going to do any good. We're in worse condition now than we were then because there were many of us, even though we had to work to get them to that point, The young people, some of them, many of them are impenetrable. We can't work and get them to that point because they're not hearing it and they're not having it. At the age of 16, Mr. Bryant, C.C. Bryant of McComb, Mississippi, right in Pike County, had asked me about being the youth president. He hadn't given me a charge. His son was supposed to be the vice president. We didn't have a charge as youth president. But at some point, Bob Moses came into McComb, and I was at Mr. Bryant's house that particular day. I believe it was there, or may have been a day or two later when he was still there. In any event, we met. And Mr. Bryant told me that that's what I would be doing, working with with Bob Moses. So at the age of 16, it was like the light came on. This is my charge. This was my chosen. I was chosen. I was chosen. Anyone who was involved in the civil rights movement were chosen. It wasn't by choice. You were chosen. And believe me, something in the universe touched you to make you know that you were chosen. It was time. It was beyond time. It was past time. I'm chosen. I'm chosen. So we started with the voter registration drives, actually knocking on doors to invite people out to workshops to prepare them to go down to the county seat in Magnolia. And not in Magnolia, they had voter registration drives in Amite County, Walthall County, different counties in southern Mississippi. We were chosen. We were chosen. We were chosen. So we knocked on doors, people that we had seen and known for years, because it was customary here in the South. Anytime you passed an individual's home, you had to respect that individual by saying good morning, or good evening, or good afternoon, sir, or ma'am, or no matter how many times you passed that one individual, you had to greet them with a hello. Or how you doing, Ms. Brown? How you doing, Mr. Watkins? How you doing, Mr. Talbot?
Doing good this time.
But many of those same individuals that we passed and greeted, when they see us coming, they would jump up and run in the house, close the door, and peek out the window.
Amen.
And you could see them peeking out the window. What was that? Fear. It was fear. So the voter registration drives were going very slowly. And it was at that point that they decided they had the youth. They had to try to keep the youth together as part of the movement, because if you recall, even the Freedom Riders were made up of youth movement. They were not older people. They were college students. So they decided that they would do direct action. And in Pike County, in McComb, Mississippi, Hollis Muhammad and Curtis Muhammad were the first two individuals who were arrested for a direct action. Hollis. I'm sorry, Brother Curtis isn't here, but they were the first two to be arrested for a direct action. And that night that they were arrested, there was a mass rally held at the Masonic Temple in McComb. And there were approximately 200 people, I would say, that attended that meeting because word had gotten out that these two young people had been arrested. So in order to keep the momentum going, they asked for other people to volunteer. That Hollis, don't allow Hollis and Curtis's arrest to be in vain. Come on, people, raise your hand, volunteer. So there were 3 of us who volunteered. That was the late Ike Lewis, Bobby Talbert, and myself. I being the only female and the youngest of the group. Bobby is an old man. He had already graduated from high school. So we volunteered to go and test was the interstate commerce law, and that was to go to the Greyhound bus station, purchase a ticket to go into either Louisiana or Tennessee. Well, they dropped us off downtown. Well, we volunteered, let's put it that way. We volunteered to go. And, excuse me, that night, I left the mass meeting. I went home. I couldn't tell my mother or ask for permission. Because if she had said no, I was going to be disobedient. She had to go to work the next day. So I chose to go without telling her, but I do remember kissing her, holding her tight, because I knew I was going to jail. My fate was going to be the same as Hollis's and Curtis's. So sure enough, we went to the Greyhound bus station, and we stepped into the white side. Okay.
Train station.
We were arrested at the bus station, and we stepped into the white side. We stepped into the white side of the bus station, and we were arrested. And they took us to the city jail and then transferred us to Pike County Jail, where we spent, excuse me, where we spent 28 days. And Hollis and Curtis, in that they were there already a couple of days before we got there, they spent, I believe it was 30 days, Hollis, was it? 34 days? Okay. So yes. So they spent 34 days. Excuse me. We rocked the jail. The men were upstairs, and I was downstairs, the only female there. And we could hear each other. We could yell up and down. We could hear each other talk, and we had messages and stuff. Hey, Brenda, are you awake? Yes. Ain't afraid of your jail because I want my freedom. I want my freedom. I want my freedom. Ain't scared of your jail because I want my freedom. I want my freedom now. And we would sing freedom songs all through the night. And then daylight would break. We'd sleep. When we were released from jail, word went out. They were so happy. They called us all freedom riders. They're so happy that these freedom riders were out of jail because they couldn't sleep at night. We were keeping them awake singing and going on all night. So I left the Pike County Jail, and 5 days later, I went to my high school. And some people want to know why 5 days later. 5 days later was because I went into Tennessee on a fundraiser with Chuck McDew, Charles Jones, and some other people to raise money for SNCC. And then when I came back, I went to my high school, which was Berglund High School, to enroll in school. And was told by the principal, C.D. Higgins, that I was expelled. I wanted to know why I was being expelled, and was told that it was for my civil rights activities. Now, mind you, these activities took place during the summer months, had absolutely nothing to do with the school system. After being expelled from the school, was told that I was expelled, I left the principal's office. I came down the hall, and one of the students said, "Well, what happened? What happened?" I told them I'd been expelled. And they told me, come on. Please don't. After being told to enter into the assembly, I went in, and the word went around into that auditorium that I had been expelled. One of the students inquired of the principal, why was Brenda Travis expelled? Why can't Brenda Travis come back to school? The principal's response was, sit down, and whoever that was, I want to see you in my office after assembly. But instead of going into his office, when the assembly was over half the school marched out of the school with me. We were going to go down to the county seat, which is Magnolia, but it was too dangerous to take that trek on Highway 51. There was no other way to get there save for to walk along Highway 51. And, you know, if you didn't have a car, which was few people had cars, we decided to go to the McComb City Hall to pray. All we wanted to do was talk to our Father. And as we ascended up the steps to pray, one by one, I think the first 5, which I was in the group of the first 5, was arrested again. And then the chief of police, who was standing there watching, said, arrest all of these ends. So they took all of the young people, all of these young, beautiful minds, and they arrested us, arrested them. I stayed in the Pike County Jail for a few hours and was then taken to Magnolia, which is the McComb City Jail, and then was taken to Magnolia, and then the next day transferred to Oakley Training School, which is over here in Raymond, Mississippi, without due process. Never saw a judge. And I guess as a black child, due process wasn't due me. So my mother, for many weeks, didn't know where I was. The attorney, Jack Young, who was one of the civil rights attorneys here in Jackson, didn't know where I was. Eventually, they told him, and my mother was thinking, oh, Lord, they've killed my baby. It's okay. My sister came in from California, stand up sisters, to support me. I'm going to get off track for a few moments. This is a young lady who integrated the McComb High School before it was mandated that the schools be integrated. She was told while she was there that she wasn't college material. My sister got up out of Mississippi, left, went into Illinois, got her high school diploma, got her bachelor's degree, and came to California to me, and today she's a PhD. Okay, back. So after my mother found out where I was, she was allowed to come visit, but also a number of students from the McComb High School wanted to visit with me, and they returned back with the sheriffs and dogs and things right at the entryway of the reformatory school. So I spent 6.5 months in Oakley Training School. Attorney Young told me that I was to be there until I was of age. Remember, I was 16 in the state of Mississippi. You're considered of age at that time. In the state of Mississippi, you were considered of age at the age of 21. So I had 5 years, and I just decided, they didn't have any schooling there for me. I was just there. No form of education. Oh, I'm sorry. Home economics. That's what they had there. So after being there for 6.5 months, and I do know that Attorney Young shared with me that they had tried everything within their power to obtain my release. They had done all kinds of writs, of habeas corpus, and everything within their power to obtain my release. Then here comes this man, Frazier. And I say Frazier because he's an attorney. Can you explain that?
Attorneys are a little paranoid. Using the name of the person involved might wind up with a libel suit. And after all she's been through, last thing on earth we want to do is have somebody bring a suit, even though the person that she's going to talk about in a minute is long since deceased.
Thank you. Anyway, he came to the reformatory school, and this was before a day on Easter Sunday morning of 1962. I was only about 2.5 weeks into my 17th birthday, and he had 2 young black women with him. And this sweet, sweet lady who was we could always call her the matron of the home, Mama Turner. Mama Turner prayed with me. Mama Turner hugged me. Mama Turner embraced me. Mama Turner kept my spirit alive. She came down the hall and she said, "Get up, child." And that's what she called me, child, because I became her child. "Get up, child. Someone is here to see you." I had no idea what time it was. And I was just thinking, I said, oh, my mother is here at this hour? And when I got there, here was this huge, big, burly man with two Negro women, black women, whatever we want to call ourselves, standing there. And he explained to me that he had been and spoken with the governor, and that the governor had released me into his custody. But I had to hurry because he had only given him 24 hours to get me out of the state of Mississippi because he could not guarantee my safety. So, in that I was free, he wasn't taking me from Mississippi without me seeing my mother. And that's what I told him. You know what? You can take me, but you got to do it before I leave. You can do it, but not without me seeing my mother. So I think there were pictures in the Jet magazine where someone took and showed me departing from my mother. And I always say and think, you know, in retrospect, after the turn of events, that this person was complicit with the governor in what he did. This man tried to molest me. And I had to put down that nonviolence Hollis that they taught us and take care of a little business. I tried to rock his world. After which, I fled from his home. I didn't know anyone in Alabama. My first time ever being in Alabama. It was my first time leaving Mississippi except for to go across the state line, I did go to Tennessee for a brief period to raise funds, but to go across the state line, the Louisiana line, where we would go for some time of recreation if the church usually would have some kind of trip for us, to go to Lake Pontchartrain. I'd met one of the other professors at Talladega. He had a son that we were going to be classmates had I remained in Alabama. And that was the only person I knew to run to and frantically beat on his door. And when he opened the door, to his surprise, what's the matter? What's wrong? And I shared with him what I just experienced. And he said, well, what can I do? What can I do? And I asked him to call Jim Foreman, who was executive secretary of SNCC. SNCC is the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, which he did. And Jim told him to put me on a bus and send me to Atlanta. And when he returned, to call him to tell him what time the bus was going to arrive and what the fare was. And this man did this. He did call Jim back. But shortly after, maybe about 2 or 3 hours after me arriving in Atlanta, there came a knock upon Jim's door. And Jim was in front, I was in the middle, and his wife Mildred was behind me. And when they opened the door, here stood this man with 2 Atlanta policemen ordering them, arrest this girl, arrest her. She's a fugitive from justice. Jim tried to reason with him, and they were arguing back and forth. And one of the policemen stepped aside, pulled me aside. I thought, sure, he was going to put the handcuffs on me and transport me back to Mississippi. Ain't scared of your jail, 'cause I want my freedom, I want my freedom, I want my freedom. Ain't scared of your jail, 'cause I want my freedom, I want my freedom now. After the policeman questioned me, he asked, how old are you? I said, I'm 17. He immediately turned and told Mr. Frazier and the other police officer, hold it, she's 17. We cannot arrest her. We cannot take her back. Because at 17, in the state of Georgia, you're no longer considered a minor. You're considered an adult. So, Georgia. So Georgia was my saving grace. After leaving Georgia, after he left, then I took a tour of what they were saying then called the North. The North. I traveled many places. I had a restless spirit. There was nobody that I felt that I could trust. Nobody. I felt even till today. That's why when I look and see what our government is doing to these young parents and these young children, stripping them away from their parents and the ill effects that it's going to have on them for the rest of their lives, because I'm an example of that. I'm a living example of that. It's not something that you grow out of. It's something that sticks with you for the rest of your life. Depression, not fear. It's not fear, they may say, when I say that I get depressed. I'm not paranoid. I'm not crazy. I'm, what they say, trust, but confirm? No. Verify? No. I'm in the position where I have to verify and then trust. And that's where I am. It wrecks or ruins. I'm not a victim. I'm not going to claim that. I'm not a victim. I'm a soldier. I'm a soldier. And for the rest of my life, I will carry the torch of freedom with me. Oh, freedom, Hollis, help me. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom over me, over me. And before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. And without leaving a message, that's the message from our ancestors, the ones who escaped to go north, as they say, to freedom. But yet, when I look at us today, freedom is not free. I understand that when we say freedom is not free, but I refuse to allow them to enslave me. We have to carry the freedom banner, Brother Hollis. We have to continue as long as we have life, liberty, and we have to pursue the happiness. We must do this, Brother Bobby. We must speak. We must teach as Sister Maya Angelou said, when you learn, teach. And I'm saying this to my white brothers and sisters. When you learn, teach. And when you teach, learn. Don't leave your children in darkness. Don't let them be filled with malice. Teach them how to love. Teach them how to embrace diversity. Just because my skin is black doesn't mean I'm any different from you except for the color of my skin and the texture of my hair. I'm no different. Sweetheart, cry tears of joy that we are here today in this institution, in this facility. Bring your children and teach them what this museum contains. It's time? Okay. I have to cut off now.
We can, if you have questions for Brenda, please ask.
Let me bring the mic to you.
Being one of the chosen, covered by the blood, how have you made it these 40, 50 years? What did you do once you had to leave Mississippi? And what brought you back, other than your faith?
Being one of the chosen, I was brought up in the church. I learned how to pray. I learned how to have faith in God. And the other thing I learned was no matter what happens, keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on, hold on. And hold on. Come on. Hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. Any more?
I'd like to make a recommendation, suggestion, and then ask a question. Since you are church lady, somebody who was brought up in the church, I'd like to suggest that you take this message, this experience, to all the churches throughout Mississippi. Arrange to meet the churches on Sundays or whenever it's convenient, and take this message to all the churches in Mississippi. I think it would be very informative and very helpful for Black people. Secondly, my question is, from your experiences, the difficulties, the sacrifices that you made, what would you suggest that, or how would you propose that we, meaning Black people, we get more Black people to vote at the elections, whether they're local elections or national elections? Because maybe we've become complacent, I don't know. But less than half percentage of Black people exercise the right to vote, which so many people have made such sacrifices to get us to be able to vote, and yet we don't. And I wonder if you have any suggestions that would help more Black people to go to the polls. Thank you.
Now, to me, that's $1 million question. And the thing is that, sadly, I don't have an answer. I don't have an answer. We have marched. We have had voter registration classes. We have had voter education classes. And the other thing is that, Brother Hollis, we have hung our heads and cried for those like Lee who died for you, and he died for me. Died for the cause of equality. The thing is, it's important to know the history. You mentioned about going to church. Many of the churches don't want us up in their pulpits or in their churches talking about civil rights and stuff like that. They have other things on their mind. And yes, when you look at the Angelicas, how are we going to go into those churches and tell them anything? You know, I mean, we have kicked down doors, torn down walls, and yet have not been able to penetrate some of the blockages in the walls and things that are before us. So I'm sorry, I don't have a better answer for you, and I'm the type of person, if I don't know, I'm going to tell you, well, you know what, I don't have an answer for you. Brother Hollis, you might have an answer for him.
If we can get together in a meeting, or if he comes to some of our workshops that Southern Echo puts on, then we'll give him an answer. And we hope and pray that once he has the answer, he can use the answer and go and bring it into reality.
Yes.
I just wanted to add one piece to show how evil not just the people at the local level was, but the whole state level. Because we crossed all over the state trying to get the students from Berglund to be enrolled in some of the other schools. They did not accept them. And look what happened. Little old J.P. Campbell College, who had both high school and college, opened the doors for the students from McComb to come and continue their education. Now, after that happened, the white that rule and control Mississippi said, we'll show you something. Some of us may have heard of this thing of adverse possession. They dropped that on J.P. Campbell College, took J.P. Campbell College out of operation, and it became a part of Jackson State, which run, controlled by the state. I just wanted to put that piece out there.
Thank you, Brother Hollis.
How you doing? This is from someone in the audience. They wanted to know, why did you not receive your diploma from Berglund? Why wasn't it given to you?
Well, there were a few answers. What happened? It's on, okay. There were two answers. One, and this one is a funny one. The school superintendent said that he had been told I wasn't expelled for civil rights activities, but I was expelled because I was promiscuous. Anything to demean, to tear down, and to destroy the character of a young black child. But the thing is, I had to be like cream. I still had to rise to the top. And 5 years ago, I was granted a diploma from the Berglund High School, or McComb School District, let's put it that way, because Berglund High School is no longer in existence. What they did instead was they took the high school, the name Berglund, and they named it after the weak principal. Yeah, it's a middle school. It's no longer a high school. They named it after the weak principal that was the founder of the school.
How you doing? And thank you so much. One of my questions is, as a millennial, you know, we're searching for something in our civil rights, and I was wondering, how do we have a conversation with the veterans like yourselves, and how do we close the generational gap to move forward together? It's a constant question that we have all the time, and I'm always trying to answer, but I can't figure that out. And I was wondering, do you have the answer to that?
I've always been told that children learn best from other children. So many times you have to start with young people who teach and follow. You know, people have peers, peer groups. Teach them in positivity to be a positive peer and teach them how to follow one another. That would be my answer to, I don't know if John has another answer, but I do know that children seem to hear other children better than they listen to me. Because they think, I mean, even at my age, I'm an old fogey, I don't know anything. And it's true, I don't. But I'm willing to try. Many times I find that young people are very disrespectful. Even the ones that are grown young people, like 27 or 27 or 28 or so forth, are very disrespectful toward people like myself. When a person look at me, and I've had this done several times, I had this said several times, it's our time now. Your time to do what? You haven't learned what to do yet. What? You're going to continue to destroy what we've built? So when you can tell me that it's your time and come up with a concrete program, then I'll step out of the way.
Have one last one here.
Thank you so much. And I feel that I would be remiss if I didn't just say something. Brenda, as one of your sisters, I am so proud of you. I'm so proud of you for having the courage to tell your story. And I know going through that, it was much pain, many days and nights of uncertainty. We veterans have been there, but I just want to applaud you for at this season in your life, for taking an opportunity to teach us more and more about not only the movement, but ourselves. And I want to say to this collective body, you're sitting in sacred space.
Yes.
Don't ever forget.
Yes.
You are sitting in sacred space. Space that many years ago plowed the ground for Mississippi's civil rights movement, that plowed the ground and paved the way for stories to be told. And just as Sister Brenda's story you've heard today, there are so many, many, many more stories similar to hers. And I want to encourage all of you, old folk, young folk, in between, tell your story. I bet if we set up a camera, we could get a story out of every one of you. But let's never forget our ancestors. Those people who made a way out of no way, who took 15 cents and fed 10 people, and took what they had to be sure that the community, that the children were safe. So this collective body, red and yellow, black and white, we're all precious in His sight, because in the final analysis, we're all kinfolk. Thank you.
Amen.
amount of the story today. More of the story is told in Ms. Travis and Ms. Dobie's book over here. Thank you all for coming. I hope that you will come take a look at these books. I'll be happy to sign a copy. But most importantly, help me thank John Obie and Brenda Travis for this program today.